Well, hello there. It's Monday, February 26th. We just got back from the swarm yesterday. Had a great time. And now it's time to get into some more maintenance on the bus before we hit the road again. This is actually something I planned on doing months ago, but got delayed because we had to replace the engine. And the engine's running perfectly, so now we're getting back into the grind. Okay, so hopefully no grind, right? We're going to be removing this wheel and checking the wheel bearings to make sure they're in good condition. As a safety precaution, what I did before I went on the trip to the swarm, I did jack up the wheels and checked for end play, and it seemed to be very reasonable amount. And so I felt comfortable going on that ride. So the main initiative here, beyond doing a wheel bearing inspection, is the seals on this shaft right here. This is called the S-cam shaft. This is what applies the brakes. The inner seal is leaking grease. And when I did my brake inspection, gosh, it's been over a year now, I had the drums off and checked everything. I just didn't take the hub off to inspect the bearings because I didn't have the seals. But now I've got the parts. So we're gonna have to be taking this whole thing apart, and we're taking advantage of the opportunity to do the wheel bearing inspection as well as replacing the S-cam seals. So here's what the S-cam seals look like. There's two for this side, an inner and an outer. This is what the wheel bearing, the wheel seal looks like. We'll get a better look at that later. And I went ahead and bought two new hubs, bearing caps that goes underneath my little rusty hubcap here, because they're cheap enough and I want to be able to see through the plastic good enough. And it's great that they come with a gasket. Just for the gasket alone, it was worth what I paid. And they come with bolts too. Pretty cool. All right, so the first thing we're going to have to do, we're going to have to jack this thing up, and not necessarily in that order, loosen all the lug nuts. I've got one of those neat torque multipliers, so that'll be easy to take the wheel off. If you've got the right facilities, there's a dolly that you could have that will lift the whole wheel with the brake drum and everything and the hub. It's like a dolly that lifts the wheel just a little bit off the ground, and you can roll it out and roll it in and make easy work out of it. But I don't have that. So we're going to take the wheel off the hub, take the drum off the hub, and then take the drum off the axle. So here's the torque multiplier. I got this thing on, I think it was Amazon. So either that or eBay. And this is a 38-to-1. So when you take this guy out of here, it's a 1-inch square drive on both the input, or this is the output, the input and the output. And they give you that handy little crank to rotate this thing, and a few different sockets, which I only ever need one. I just keep the other ones in case I end up helping somebody out. With the wheel, I'll have more sockets. So this thing goes on there, like so. And this is called the reaction arm. I cut the little nub off the end of here. It used to have a little piece that stuck out, and it would get in the way on the rear wheels. But I'm going to start turning this, and you see how that's coming back. And I'm doing this in the counterclockwise rotation, which is to remove, and then hold that in place right there. Cutting hard with one hand, but there. All right, now I'll get the handle. Cranking here counterclockwise. Once it starts to get pressure on it, it holds itself. Now this is going to be super easy. I don't know if you can hardly straining at all to turn that, and that's like 450 foot-pounds. It's like you'd need 2 Boy Scouts and a strong man on a 6-foot bar to take those things off. So what I made, because this takes quite a bit of turning, I made this adapter here, which is a 1-inch female on this side, 3/8 female on this side. I take this little adapter I got here and plug it in there, and I can put that on my drill, and then that'll turn this much quicker. It's not quite enough torque, I don't think, anyway. It's been a while since I've done this. For the full torque of these bolts is more than that. It's what was it, 18 inch-pounds on this will give you 450 foot-pounds on that end. It's pretty wild. It works so well. So let's take that off. We're gonna put this on here and hook my drill up to that. Alrighty, let me zoom out here. So we got this in first gear and reverse. All right, just for fun, let's try this next one, which I haven't broke loose by hand yet, and see how we do on the torque here. I don't think this little drill's gonna have enough. Yeah, it does. Ain't that awesome? I don't even have this on the highest torque. So to be completely fair and honest, loosening the lug nuts with just a drill is a little bit too hard on the drill. So I did give it a few turns with the crank handle before hooking the drill up to it. And then once they were all cracked loose enough that this I could turn by hand, in other words, it was no longer pushing on the reaction arm. I went all the way around and got them all that loose. Then I just took this straight 1-inch bar that they give you and put that in my adapter and on the socket and spun them all off. Piece of cake. After walking the wheel out from underneath here, next thing is this little plastic gasket that we put on there. These are to prevent corrosion between the metal, the steel brake drum, and the aluminum wheel. Let me zoom in on that so you guys can see the brand and all. Let's see, I can't see inside my phone here. Come in the shade. Still can't see it. Here we go. They're pretty cheap too. I think I paid like, I don't know, 12 or 18 bucks a piece for these things. And I don't know where I got them. I just did an internet search. It might have been Amazon. Okay, next we're gonna slide the drum off. The drum might not want to come off. Depends on how much of a ridge we have here. Probably gonna have to pull this little pin. I'm even making some crappy video here. The drum might not want to come off if the brakes are too close to the drum, too tight, if you will. So we're probably I got a little tool. You can use a screwdriver. You pull this little button out right here, and then on the back of here there's a little screw that you turn, and that will unwind the S-cam. This is called a slack adjuster. Okay, so I should pause for a moment and talk about what I'm doing here. I've got a bottle jack under the axle. I don't have jack stands with me. They're back at my workshop, which is not accessible to me right now. So we're just using the bottle jack. That's about as stable as a jack stand. We're on good level concrete slab here, front and back. The parking brakes are set. This beast is not going to move, but I am not going to be going underneath anything here. I'm always going to be working as if this thing could fall, which is a normal practice anyway. So let's see if I remember what size that thing is. Is it a 5/16? Yes, it is. All right, so there you go. This way loosens. Is it? Oh, no. Yeah, it loosened it up. You could tell it's a little bit more resistant to tighten than it is to loosen because you're going with the spring. And it kind of sucks when you know you've got the right tool, but you don't know where the heck it is. So there's a little tool that's like a fork that you stick in there. Whatever. All right, so let me get this drum off of here and we'll look at the brakes. Now we can get a good look-see. There's the seal that's leaking. And if you notice, the brakes don't have grease all over them. That's because I cleaned all this up and I greased this last year when I did my brake inspection. That's when I discovered this and put the job on hold because I did not have the wheel seals and was not prepared to do that other work. So now we're taking care of it, and looks like you know, this has not been re-greased since I greased it and wiped it all down. So all that oozed out from between these two bearings and seals. All right, so the grease should be coming out the other end. All right, let's give you a look-see here what we got. It's just a square little nub. I don't even know what I'm aiming my camera at. I can't see. It's just too bright out here. My display is almost completely black, but it's a square little 5/16 nub. And I'm going to rotate this thing around and see what it's doing right there. That's applying the brakes, and this is retracting the brakes. So now it's got snug. So I'm going to come off the snug, so right here. So the wheels, these rollers right here, are not bound up on the S-cam. Okay. So next, we're going to take the brake shoes off, and this is actually pretty easy. Okay, so let me show you the easy way, how I discovered what I call the easy way, how to take these things apart. There's tension on these springs holding these rollers tight. There's actually supposed to be some little clips that hold the rollers in there so they don't fall out, but for some reason this side, I think this wheel's been worked on by somebody, and that's why the grease seals leak, and that's why all these little spring clips are missing. But what I do is I get a big old screwdriver and I put it in here and pry the shoe up enough to pull the roller out. Then once the roller's out, the shoe can kind of collapse over the S-cam, both of them, and then the shoes will get loose enough where it loosens up the springs. So yeah, man, got the rollers out, and it doesn't take much of a screwdriver to you know, pull against the springs. Now the shoes are loose. You can see the spring in there. The trick to pulling off the spring, which is super easy to do, is you just put the screwdriver in that opening and you hook on the bottom of the spring right there, and it stretches this enough that you can get the spring over the top of the little pin that's right here. Okay, so now it's as easy as just unwrapping them. They come right off. And I'm going to keep the shoes in their original orientation so they go right back into the drum how they were. So the next operation, we have to drain the oil out of the hub. I'm going to use this fill port here for a starter. So we're going to screw that, then we can turn this down and let it drip into a pan so we don't get a whole big old mess everywhere. Hello, it's Tuesday, February 27. Amazon delivered my 2 3/16 socket. So let's see if I got the right one. Oh, that's perfect. We got it all apart and mostly cleaned up. We're going to use a little sandpaper on this surface here to clean that up and more thoroughly inspect the axle spindle. This is the seal that was leaking, and it looks like it's like right up against the bushing that's in there. Now, I don't particularly care to see it that way. When we pry this out, we'll get a better look at what's going on in there. And there's another seal just like that on the inside right there. All right, let me show you the parts. Hang on a second. So there's the old seal that I ripped out of there. Inner bearing still looks good. Outer bearing looks like it's brand new. And there's the nuts and the lock tabs. There's the slack adjuster. And this had one big washer on the wheel end side, and these 3 little washer shims at the end of the shaft with the snap ring that held that on. And here's the S-cam shaft, which looks pristine. So everything is great. The races look good inside the hub. So I'm going to start putting this thing together. At least we can get the S-cam back installed before we run out of daylight. So that bushing doesn't look like it's all the way in. I'm going to get a socket, see if I can tap that and push it in about another 1/16 of an inch. Now that's what I think it should look like. I'm going to use that same socket to put the new seals in. So this seal goes with the lips facing in to hold the grease from getting onto the brakes. And the seal on the other end goes with the lips facing out, so it lets the grease out that side. All right, so far this is going without a hitch. I wiped grease all over that. And there's our outer seal. Let's see if I can get a shot of the inner one. And that 2 17/16 socket worked absolutely beautifully as a seal driver. Alrighty, so we got the S-cam in, got the new seal here, got the new seal there, and all the washers and shims are all in their original locations. Snap rings back on here, and we got these 2 pins put in place, and no adjustments were messed with here. So the only thing left is going to be to adjust the brakes with that screw at the bottom down there. I cleaned that thoroughly with sandpaper and brake clean, and gave it a coating of this stuff just in case I'm not successful tonight getting the seal into the hub, because that's the one thing I don't have is seal drivers and race drivers for that matter on these giant bearings. I do have that equipment for automobile bearings, but unfortunately for me, I'm going to have to wing this by using a board or something to install the new seal in that hole. Wish me luck. We got everything in here as perfectly clean as we could with brake clean and blowing it out with air. And now we're going to take some of this and put it in there. Man, that's some thick stuff. Man, that's really thick. All right. So now We're going to rub a little oil on the outside of this and the inside of this. Well, I guess we can do the inside after we put it in. We're going to put our little towel over it, and we're going to tap it in with a block of wood and a hammer. That was easy. Okay. How about that? It's all back together. We're done for the day. The only thing we're lacking is to properly set the preload on the bearings, or the bearing, yeah, I guess you call that preload. There's a procedure for this. So I just put all the nuts and washers on here just to keep it in there and clean. And I'm gonna go get the new hubcap and put it on there with a couple screws to keep the dirt out of this for the night. And also, I don't have the socket, I forgot to mention, for the inner nut. Amazon's gonna deliver that Saturday. Hello, it's Wednesday, February 28th, and we're just getting back on this. So, yesterday evening when I was cleaning up and putting away all my stuff and got my little coffee can full of solvent where I was cleaning parts, and this was in the can. Son of a gun. And guess where this goes? This is the first part. It goes right behind there. You know, when I put that in there, I said to myself, man, that doesn't look right. But I wasn't paying attention, and I was kind of rushing to hurry up and get all this put together yesterday. So I get to do this whole thing all over again. Ain't that just great? All done. Hey, that wasn't bad at all. So there's a little shield for the seal. All I did was took the hardware off, took the front bearing out, and pulled the hub back and just let it hang on the axle gently to give room to pull this guy out. Yeah, plus I had to take all that stuff off, right? Pull this guy out, put the shield on, stuck it back in. It took me all of about, I don't know, 15, I don't think 20 minutes. All right, let's read this over carefully. So it says, carefully mount hub on inner wheel and inner wheel bearing assembly on the axle. Be careful not to unseat the inner wheel bearing seal. Fill the hub cavity with oil. Then install the outer wheel bearing. Handle the bearings with clean hands. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, there's the assembly order. After the wheel hub and bearings are assembled on the spindle, tighten the inner adjusting nut finger tight. That's that nut right there. While rotating the wheel hub assembly, tighten the adjusting nut to 100 foot-pounds or 136 Newton meters. Back off the adjusting nut completely. Important, the new nut, yeah, I've got the new nut with 5 to 12 threads, okay? For the new, thicker 5 to 12 thread adjusting nut, tighten the adjusting nut to 20 foot-pounds while rotating the wheel hub assembly. All right, and this is the difference. The thinner one, I've got the thicker one. All right, and then back off the adjusting nut 1/3 of a turn or 2 flats of the nut. Install the locking device and the jam nut. That's the locking device and the jam nut. Install the locking device. Okay, if no hole in the lock ring allows the dowel pin on the adjusting nut aligns, remove the lock ring, turn it over, and install it. That's this guy right here. That little pin on the nut goes inside one of those holes. So they're it's like a vernier where you could, the holes are not directly in line with the key. They're like halfway. I'll show you when we get out there. All right, and then you back it off if you need to. Yeah. Then install the jam nut and tighten it to the applicable torque value on table 1. With the jam nut installed and tightened, now you adjust the bearings. So this is the jam nut on the outside. Important, do not adjust wheel bearings with the wheel mounted on the hub. You cannot accurately adjust and measure the bearing end play with the wheel mounted on the hub because it'll be too heavy. Okay. Attach a dial indicator to the hub and set the point. Okay, use aluminum hubs. If it's stud piloted, okay, release the brakes. Grip the side of the hub at the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock positions. Push in on the hub to seat the inboard bearing set. Zero the dial indicator. Once again, grip the sides of the hub at 3 and 9 o'clock. This time pull out the drum. Push the hub back in to confirm. So you're just pushing in and pulling back, and you're monitoring with the dial indicator what the end play is on the bearings. And then here's the spec right here. The end play must be between 1 and 5 thousandths of an inch. All right. And if it's not, you make adjustments with the bearing and you repeat until you get that spec. All right, moment of truth. Perfect. All right, let's get the rest of the tools. We did the torque to 100 foot-pounds while turning the hub, backed off the nut completely till it was loose. Then I retorqued it to 20 foot-pounds and backed it off 2 flats, and it just happens to line up perfectly on that. And what they were talking about earlier in the directions, if you turn the washer over, you see it's halfway between 2 others, so it's kind of like a vernier type adjustment. So now we put this washer on, which normally you don't reuse, but I'm going to because I've still got area on this washer that has not been used, not been bent over. So that little dimple goes in those holes, so this washer can't turn. Now this guy goes on, and we've got to torque this one. And I don't have a torque wrench that goes that high. This is the best I'm able to do here with the tools that I have, and with some, multiple attempts of pushing in and pulling out on the hub without rotating, because rotating gives me some variation. But I'm getting right at just about 5 thousandths of an inch. There, that's 5 and that's 0 there. Okay, so that's technically within spec, but because I have an inquiring mind, I'm going to loosen this nut. I'm going to tighten the adjusting nut to the next hole, turning the washer so it'll be like half a hole, and see what the difference is, because I just want to know how much of a difference each increment is. Whew. All right, I've been doing some serious yanking and pulling on this thing, but I'm at 3 thousandths, pushing in as hard as I can and pulling out as hard as I can, which I can only show you here. There's 1 thousandths with just one hand, but when I give it my full strength, I'm getting 3 thousandths. That's great. So now I can bend 2 fresh areas of this tang washer here to secure the nut, put the hub on, and then fill it with oil. To bend the tangs over, I just use a pair of channel locks and I gripped it like that and pulled down and did it to both sides and good to go. I'm going to give this thing a final wipe, make sure that there's like no shavings of metal that came off during that process. Wipe this with level. Torque to 12 to 16 foot-pounds. 15 foot-pounds is the same as 180 inch-pounds. Getting the oil level to be filled properly is probably going to take days. There's this line right here. That's the minimum, right where my glove ends, right there. And the maximum is right up there. So in that range is where we want the oil, which is pretty tight. Oil's going to flood this area out here. It has to work its way through the outer bearing and then fill up the void between the bearings, and then work its way through the inner bearing and then fill up the void between the inner bearing and the seal. So I'm going to fill this up now to a little higher than the max, probably like right up to the hole there. And tomorrow I'll come take a look at it and see where it's sitting. Okay, so we're over full, and I'm just gonna let it sit, and I can pretty much almost see it going down. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and record all this stuff, and I'm not gonna wait for it either. Like I said, I'm gonna wait till tomorrow, see where it settles down, and add a little bit at a time. That's after taking lunch, so that's what, 30 or 40 minutes? And it went from way over full to below the add line. Now we're gonna get the brakes adjusted. And you can see there's a bunch of space between the shoe and the drum here. I got my screwdriver in there, which I don't need for tightening. Let me show you. See how it clips like a ratchet when you go in the tightening direction. So we're gonna tighten this all the way down. Turn the wheel a little bit here. Okay, we're dragging. Real hard, so we're gonna keep going real tight. Now the wheel is locked, right? And then put this guy in there. I'm gonna back off a quarter turn. Maybe a little bit more. Right about there. Okay. So this is gonna self-adjust anyway, where it wants to go, but at least we're in the ballpark of where it needs to be. Okay, and yanking on this, I'm getting about, that much travel. So we know we're not binding, brakes are not dragging, and we're close. All right, last step is putting on the lug nuts. I just had the two on there snug down for getting the brakes set and the wheel on, but the book calls for a little bit of motor oil between this washer and the nut so that it'll spin more free than that is. That's kind of dry right there. So we're going to do that. We're going to put all the nuts on, and we're going to torque them with the torque multiplier. All right, we're torquing now. Not twerking, torquing. So my first pass, I went all the way around with that, put one leg on it, so it's tight, ish. Let the jack down, and we're sitting on the ground. And now we've got the torque multiplier on here, and we're having to do the math This is a 38-to-1 ratio, and that's easy to check. You just turn the input and count the turns until that one makes one full revolution. So it says right here on the lug nuts, 450 to 500 foot-pounds. So if you take 450, you divide that by 38, and then multiply that times 12. It tells you how many inch-pounds. Because I've got an inch-pounds torque wrench, and I think it's 150 inch-pounds to get you within the range there. I'll put the math up on the screen here in a minute, but first thing I do is I use my drill. Don't freak out now. And I put this on first gear and hang on. Now remember, I already tightened this with like my leg on that. And I go until the drill stops. So that was what, a third of a turn. And now we're gonna go crisscross applesauce here until I get them all. And then we're gonna come back with the torque wrench on here at 150 inch-pounds. All right, so you're probably wondering, what is this knucklehead doing with an inch-pounds torque wrench? It's because I don't have a torque wrench that will torque 450 to 500 foot-pounds. And I don't have a 3/8 torque wrench that can accurately torque 12.5 foot-pounds. But I do happen to have this inch-pounds torque wrench. So that's what we're using. You know, you got to use what you've got. So we just keep turning this. There we go. And what I do is repeat a few times, because this torque multiplier's got crude gears in it. And I just keep going. There it is. There it is. All right. Repeat that 9 more times. Well, I went around twice, torquing all the nuts. We're good to go. I've already added oil like 2 or 3 times to the hub, and it keeps going down, so we're just going to keep filling it. While I was here, I did a grease job, greased all my pivot points, the slack adjuster, and I really probably should have greased the S-cam before I put it all together to make sure that that seal up there really was sealing. But it did its job. The grease came out this side like it's supposed to, and both kink pins and the tie rod end down there. So now we're going to go to the other side, and I'm not going to record anything on the other side. It'll be a repeat performance of this, unless I find something worth seeing.